Network Security, Chapter 12. After reading this chapter, you should be able to recognize the basic forms of system attacks. That's very important. Recognize the concepts underlying physical protection measures. Cite the techniques used to control access to computers and networks. Discuss the strengths and weaknesses of passwords. List the techniques used to make data secure. Explain the difference between substitution-based cipher and transportation-based cipher. Outline the basic features of public key cryptography, advanced encryption standards, digital signatures, and public key infrastructure. Cite the techniques used to secure communications. Describe the differences between frequency hopping spread spectrum technique and the direct sequence spread spectrum technique. Recognize the importance of a firewall and be able to describe the three basic types of firewall protection. Recognize the techniques used to secure wireless communications. List the advantages to a business of having security policy. Introduction. Computer network security has reached a point at which it can best be characterized by two seemingly conflicting statements. Never has network security been better than it is today, and never have computer networks been more vulnerable than they are today. So secure, so vulnerable. How both of these statements can be true is an interesting paradox. All right. So we'll move on to the common system attacks. As a result of a large number of attacks on computer networks, and in recent years, many studies have been performed to try to determine the standard methodology or methods of system attacks. While we will introduce many of these types of attacks, the two most popular attacks method for the last several years, according to the infoworld.com, have been: number one, socially engineered attacks. Number two, exploiting non-vulnerabilities in operating systems and application software. A socially engineered attack, this is a new term to be known, often occurs in the form of a link in a web page. You are reviewing the web page and you see an announcement or message informing you that, for example, your computer is full of malicious software, and if you will just click on the accompanying link, we will download for free software package that will clean out all the malicious software. Once the user clicks the link, malicious code or malware is downloaded and then take over your computer. This malware can go on to erase sensitive data, erase your hard drive, or even hold your computer hostage unless you pay the regular price for the real software package to remove the malware. And the second type of attack, using the internet and sometimes browser vulnerabilities. Hackers will spend long hours digging into popular operating systems and application software in an attempt to find an opening or hole, a security hole, a weakness. Once this opening is found, the hacker will launch an attack that compromises the host computer or network server. In both of these types of attacks, the perpetrator can gain access to the user's system in a number of ways. One very common technique is to deliver an email or a web page that contains a malicious piece of code that's called mobile malicious code or Trojan horse, because it's hiding inside a harmless looking piece of code. Once the user reads the email and opens the attachment, the Trojan horse is released and the damage occurs. Many people consider Trojan horse to be the form of a computer virus. A computer virus is a small program. Now we have a new term. A computer virus is a small program that alters the way a computer operates without the knowledge of the computer's users, and often does various types of damage and deleting and corrupting data and program files, or by alerting operating system components so that the computer operation is impaired or even halted. More recently, malicious programs that take over operations on a compromised computer are termed botnets. Some other types of viruses include macrovirus, a type of virus that is programmed into an attached macro file. Macros are often found in spreadsheets, databases, word processing documents. A macrovirus hides within an application's macro and is activated when the macro is executed. Boot sector virus. One of the original forms of viruses, a boot sector virus, is usually stored in some form of removable media. When the removable media is connected to a new machine, it is used to boot the machine. The virus moves from the media into the host system. Newer versions do not need to be booted. They simply have to reside on the removable media, such as on a flash drive. Polymorphic virus. These viruses mutate with every infection, thus making them difficult to locate. File infector virus, a virus that infects a pieces of executable code, such as an exe or .com file. When the program is executed either from a disk or from a network, the host computer becomes infected. Another form of a computer virus is a worm. A computer worm is a program that copies itself from one system into another over the network without assistance of a human being. Worms usually propagate themselves by transferring from computer to computer via email. Typically, a virus or a worm is transformed as a Trojan horse. Another common. Some system attacks do not even need a user to open an email or a web browser. All a user has to do to become infected is to connect to the internet. While connecting, the computer is constantly vulnerable to malicious software, programs, and the internet that are scanning for unprotected computers, open TCP ports, and trying to exploit non-operating systems and application vulnerabilities. Another common category of system attacks that became popular at the end of the 20th century was the denial of service attack. Denial of service attacks or distributed denial of services attacks bombard computer site with so many messages that the site is incapable of performing its normal duties. Denial of service attacks. In email bombing, a predator sends an excessive amount of unwanted email messages to someone. If these email messages have a return address of someone other than the person actually sending the email, then the sender is spoofing. Smurfing is the name. Smurfing, another term. Smurfing is the name of a particularly nasty automated program that attacks a network by exploiting the internet protocol, broadcast addressing, and other aspects of internet operations. Simply stated, an attacker sends a packet into an innocent third party, the amplifier, who then unknowingly multiplies the packet hundreds or thousands of times and send these copies to the intended victim. Ping is a common internet tool. A ping storm is a condition in which the internet pings program is used to send a flood of packets to a server to make the server inoperable. They just keep attacking. An example of a denial of service attack intended to cripple a web server. Hacker compromised web server, thousands of packets to the target site. The hacker would collect personal information and illegally purchase items, or even worse, commit identity theft. This type of attack is called phishing. Another type of attack that involves tricking the user into supplying confidential information is pharming. In this attack, a web user seeking for a visit particular company site is unknowingly redirected to a bogus website that looks exactly like the company's official website. Rootkit, two more tools that are used by malicious users are rootkits and keyloggers. Rootkit is a program or programs that have been installed, usually unknowingly, in the user's operating system. They are installed so deep within the operating system that normal protection software does not even notice the rootkit, thus making them a highly manipulative form of attack. With the rootkit in place, user's computer can essentially be taken over by a remote user. Although some rootkits are usually useful and can help with the problem computers, most rootkits are meant to be destructive. A keylogger is a software system that runs in a computer and captures and records all the keystrokes made by the keyboard. This can be a useful program for someone who wants to monitor the computer user's progress on a certain task. Unfortunately, it can be also used to capture someone's user ID and password or private information. Some companies also use keyloggers to monitor their employees' productivity or habits. This kind of use can be either good or bad depending upon your frame of reference. So we have the rootkit and the keylogger. Keylogger monitors the input from the user. The rootkit is for remote control. Take over the device. Physical protection. Physical protection. The physical protection of a computer system or a computer network consists of protecting the equipment from physical damage, Causes of physical damage. Causes of physical damage include fires, floods, earthquakes, power surges, vandalism. In many cases, the techniques to prevent damage are a matter of common sense. For example, a room containing computer equipment should always be locked. Unauthorized persons should not be allowed to enter. If at all possible, cabling and the devices that cables plug into should not be left exposed. Some equipment obviously has to be out in the open for public access. In this case, equipment should be locked down. There are many kinds of anti-theft devices for locking cabinets, locking cables of cabinets, and locking down keyboards and other peripheral devices. Another matter of common sense is the expensive computer system should not be placed in the basements of a building. Basements can flood, get full of water, and often high humidity locations. Right? So many things, just common sense. An electrical thing. Surveillance may be also considered in the form of physical protection. Although many employees feel surveillance is an intrusion into their privacy, many network administrators consider it a good deterrent of computer vandalism and theft. One form of surveillance can be used beyond the capturing of live videos with camera. For example, companies that accept merchandise orders over telephone often monitor each telephone call. All right. And another example, some companies use a form of surveillance called intrusion detection or intrusion detection system, which involves electronically monitoring data flow and system requests into and out of their system. In addition to video surveillance and intrusion detection, there is an interesting surveillance technique built on the concept of honeypot. In computer technology, a honeypot is a trap. So it's a pot of honey. It's a trap that is set by the network personnel in order to detect unauthorized use of the network resources. Typically, a honeypot is a network location that appears to be a part of the company's resources and contains data that might be interesting or valuable to hackers. In reality, this data is bogus and meant to tempt hackers into committing break-in. Companies that implement this technique usually maintain surveillance of the honeypot and thus are able to observe the action of would-be hackers. Basically, honeypot can serve as an early warning tool. So just like a beat, you throw a beat and the hacker take that beat and you know what he's up to or she's up to. Controlling access by putting levels and controlling access to the database, to the applications, to the file system, and to everything. Local area networks and database system provide much flexibility in assignment of access rights to individual or group individual. As you will see shortly, access right defines the network resources that a user or set of users can access. A company's computer network specialist, along with database administrator and someone at the top level of management, such as CIO, often work together to decide how the company should be broken into information access groups. A sample dialog box from network operating system of setting time of day restrictions. So you can access on specific time window. Login time restrictions. Password and ID system. And this points or bullet points are related to the password. Controlling user password with a typical network operating system. So you can allow user to change the password, require password, minimum password length, force periodic password changes, days, time password expires, require unique passwords, limit grace login. Yeah, just like that. And all these can be found in the Active Directory as well as in the novel network. So this is a network, okay. Active Directory is from Microsoft, novel network is from Novel company. Biometric techniques to observe. So biometric techniques also can be done, like voice prints, fingerprints, eye prints, face prints, and all that stuff. Access rights. Modern computer systems and computer networks allow multiple users to access resources such as files, tapes, printers, and all that stuff. How and who is the access right? Permission and the permission levels: full control, read only, edit only, delete subfolders, whatever, add. Yeah. Auditing. Auditing a computer system is often a good way to deter crime and can also be useful in apprehending a criminal after a crime has been committed. Computer auditing usually involves having a software program that monitors every transaction within a system. As each transaction occurs, it is recorded into an electronic log along with the date, time, and owner of the transaction. Just log files, and the log files can be used for auditing. Windows Event Viewer example, it's an audit. The event viewer shows the events that's happening in the computer. Securing data. Basic encryption and decryption techniques.